G'day guys, welcome to today's video review of 2020 Best Picture Academy Award nominee, Little Women. We start with Jo March, played by Saoirse Ronan, walking into a publisher's office. She's trying to sell a story to the editor. He makes changes to the story and says he'll buy it, but people want happy stories as they've just been through a war. She agrees and sells him her story. The editor says if she wants to sell more stories to make sure that if it's about women, that by the end they're either married or dead. She runs home excited at the prospect of selling a story. She arrives back at the boarding house where she's staying and chats to a man, Frederick, before she rushes off to work. We then cut to Amy March, played by Florence Pugh, who's in the park painting when she takes a carriage ride with Aunt March, which is played by Meryl Streep. They talk about returning to help someone who's ill until she sees a young man walk past and jumps off the carriage and runs to hug him. She says to him that she can't believe that Jo turned him down and invites him to a New Year's Eve party. This is Lawrence, or Laurie, played by Timothée Chalamet. Next up, we get Meg March, which is played by Emma Watson, and she's looking for fabric to buy for a new dress. We also get to see that she's got 2 kids. Next we cut to a theatre and Jo is watching a play and the young man from earlier, Frederick, is also there and he notices her. When the production's over, they go to a bar where she gets roped into dancing. We then cut to 7 years earlier when all the March girls were together in Concord, Massachusetts. The sisters are preparing Meg to go to a ball with Jo. Meg is having a great time at the ball dancing while Jo sits on the sidelines watching. This is where Jo first meets Laurie. Laurie and Jo end up dancing outside and having a great time together. Meg hurts her foot, so they leave early. Laurie brings them home in his carriage. We then meet the girl's mum, Marmee March, played by Laura Dern, and Amy introduces herself to Laurie with longing in her eyes. All the sisters fuss about Meg's ankle. Laurie leaves, and he's longing for Jo. We then jump time frames again, and now Jo is writing stories in her room back at the boarding house when a delivery of Shakespeare books arrives at her door. She looks to see who delivered them, but there's no one there, but there is a note on it that says that the books are from a young man, Frederick, and it's going to help her with her writing. Laurie arrives at the New Year's Eve party drunk with 2 women on his arm. Amy confronts him, and she tells him that she despises him. She tells him that she feels sorry for him for Jo rejecting him, but he needs to pull his act together. Laurie embarrasses himself and then leaves the party. Jo sits with Frederick, and Frederick reads her stories and he says he doesn't like them and that these ones are not good. These are the ones that have been published, and Jo's taken back by his honesty. She gets offended and tells him she doesn't want his opinion. He was really only trying to help. She's a good author, but the writing that she's doing to be published is not coming from her heart. Jo takes the train to her mother's for Christmas, and she wakes up and all her sisters are there in a flashback about the war still being in effect. Jo's written a play and the girls are rehearsing it. Their mother comes home and asks them to donate their breakfast to a less well-off family, and they go to the family and drop off the food to the 5 hungry kids. Laurie's grandfather, who lives opposite, sends over a feast for the girls, as he's a lord, and Jo says it's because of Laurie and that they should make friends with him. Their mum then reads them a letter from their father, who's off at the Civil War. This is intercut with them performing the play. It mentions that their dad calls them his Little Women. Jo visits Aunt March and tells her that she'll need to marry well if she wants to be well off. Aunt March isn't married, but she's already rich. They have a conversation about the limited opportunities for women in that time period. She then also tells her that she wants to go to Europe one more time and she's going to need a companion, and Jo could be it. Amy gets in trouble at school and turns up at Laurie's house. The girls and family rock up and the mum says Jo should homeschool Amy and Beth. The girls are now practicing a new play written by Jo starring Meg. Jo wants to invite Laurie to join their theatre group, and the other girls want it to remain a girls-only club. Laurie appears as he's been hiding there all along, and they have fun and he joins the club. Cut back to current time and Joe goes home. Mum and Meg and her kids are there and the housekeeper. Beth is upstairs sick. Joe wants to give them money from sale of her stories to help. We flash back again to memories of when they were kids and Joe was going out with Laurie and Meg and Laurie's brother. Amy gets upset because she has to stay home as she's too young, and she burns Joe's stories in the fire. When she gets home, Joe and Amy fight. Amy says the only way to hurt Joe is to destroy her work, as she couldn't care if somebody burned her dress, and she really wanted to hurt Joe. Joe says that she doesn't deserve any of her forgiveness and she hates her forever. The next day, Joe goes out ice skating with Laurie, and Amy chases after them. Joe ignores her and skates away and has fun with Laurie. At that moment, Amy falls through the ice and is sinking in the water. Joe and Laurie help her get out, and their sisterly fight is officially over. We cut back now to Beth, sick in bed, and she reads a letter from Amy that says she's with Laurie and that Joe says that Laurie won't respond to any of her letters. Beth says she misses him as well. Cut back in time to when Joe and Laurie were dating. Meg goes to the city to a party while Beth plays Laurie's grandfather's piano. The other girls at the party decide to call Meg Daisy. Laurie is also at the party, as it turns out this is a party for girls to meet eligible bachelors. Meanwhile, the grandfather is listening to Beth play the piano from the shadows and is getting emotional. Laurie and Meg dance and have fun, and she promises not to tell Joe. We cut now to Meg, who's talking to her husband about the fabric that she purchased for her new dress, and now he can't afford a new coat. We now cut back to Amy, who's painting in a studio. Laurie comes to apologise for turning up drunk to the New Year's Eve party. She says she wants to quit painting because she's no genius at it, and she's betrothed to be married, and she needs to marry well to support her family financially. They have a conversation about marriage being an economic proposition. Laurie cracks on to Amy, and then she goes to meet her fiancé. We then go back to Beth and Joe on the beach, and Joe is reading her other people's stories as she hasn't written any of new stories of her own in a long time. Beth tells her that she's got to write, as she's sick and she's got to do what Marmee told us to do, which is do it for someone else. We cut back to the Civil War Joe, and she's sold her hair for her mum to get money to get on the train to go see her father. Back to current time, and Amy is asking Laurie when's he going to return to his grandfather. He's coming on to her, and he asks her not to marry her fiancé. She says that she'll not play second fiddle to Joe. Cut back in time, and the girls are discussing a letter from the mother about the father. Beth delivers food to some poor people, and on the way back she bumps into Laurie's granddad and says thank you as he gave her his piano earlier on. The granddad realises that she's sick, and it turns out she's got scarlet fever. We cut forward again, and Joe's reading a new story to Beth on the beach. Beth knows that she's dying. The aunt tells Amy that she's the last hope for the family. Beth is dying, Meg is married to a poor guy, and Joe doesn't want to get married, so she must marry well to look after her family. She tells her Laurie's gone back to London, but Amy's only just told her fiancé that she won't marry him. Meg's husband tells her that he will look after the kids while she goes and looks after her sister Beth, and to get the dress made as he wants her to be happy. She tells him that she sold the fabric and they make up. Beth is dying and they call for the mum. We time jump again to when they were younger and Beth was well enough to get up for Christmas time when the father came home from the war. We cut back now and Beth is dead. Beth's funeral and the whole family is there. We cut back in time again now to Meg's wedding day, and Joe wants them both to flee. Meg wants to get married, and Joe says that she never does. Meg and John's wedding is a happy day, and Amy announces that Aunt wants her to go to Europe with her. Joe's jealous, but Joe's now with Laurie. Laurie pleads to Joe that he loves her, and she says she can't love him back. We cut back to now, and the mum's telling Jo to go back to New York to be with her friend Frederick. She says that she's ruined that with her temper, as she does everything else. Laurie's coming to pay his respects, and Amy's coming home too, as she's devastated over Beth's death. Jo's now having second thoughts about having said no to Laurie. She wants to be an independent woman, but she's also lonely and she wants to be loved. Laurie meets up with Amy to go and see the family after Beth's death. She tells him that she's not getting married to her fiancé, and Laurie ends up kissing her. Meanwhile, Jo is writing a letter to Laurie, telling him that she wants to be with him. Laurie arrives at the house and tells Jo that he and Amy are now married. Jo goes downstairs and sees Amy and tells her that she's happy for her, and goes and retrieves the letter she'd written to Laurie, confessing her true feelings, and tears it up and throws it in the river. Jo meets up with the grandpa, who's devastated as well over the death of Beth, and Jo offers the grandpa her friendship. Jo then goes on a writing frenzy, inspired by Beth's passing. She sends the first few chapters of a book to the publisher. Aunt March is also dead, and Jo's inherited the house and wants to turn it into a school. She tells her sisters that the book she's writing is the story of the Little Women. Jo receives a letter from the publisher who says the story's crap and to keep writing the scandalous ones that they'll continue to publish. Frederick then turns up at the house. The family invite him in to stay for dinner. Frederick says he's going to California. He then plays Beth's piano for the entire family. Frederick leaves and offers Jo to come and visit him in California. Amy and the family then convince Jo that she's in love with Frederick and that she should go after him. We then cut to the publisher in his kitchen with his wife. Their daughters come downstairs and they've read the manuscript for Little Women, and they tell him, "You must publish this." The family then help Jo go after Frederick. We then cut back to the publisher's office, and he's dissecting the story of Little Women and asks who the main character marries, and she says she marries neither, as all through the book she doesn't want to get married, and he tells her this is essential to sell the novel. She agrees to change the story ending and marries Frederick. We then cut back to her family helping her catch up with Frederick at the railway station, telling him she wants him to stay. They kiss under an umbrella in the rain. Jo negotiates to keep the copyright of her book. We cut back to Jo's school, and the whole family are there, including Frederick. Jo's watching her book being printed on the printing press and thinks of her childhood that inspired the book and smiles with pride. So, obviously, this is not a movie I'd usually choose to see. I know this is a classic literary tale, which I've never read, and this is also the 6th cinematic adaptation of this story, of which I've never seen any of the previous versions. So I can't talk about comparisons to other versions, or what may or may not have been changed from the source material. But as a story I wasn't familiar with, and a film I hadn't seen, I really enjoyed it. It was beautifully shot and costumed, and well acted by everyone involved. The only criticism I would have of the casting was maybe Laurie, or Teddy as Jo calls him. I didn't think Timothée Chalamet was a bad actor, just wrongly cast in this role. I could imagine sisters fighting over Christian Bale in this role, that I believe he did in the 90s version, but I didn't believe it over this guy in this one. I thought Saoirse Ronan was really good as Jo. Once again though, never seen anyone else as Jo to compare it to, and I thought this was the best performance I've ever seen Emma Watson do to date. But the standout for me was Florence Pugh as Amy. She had so much presence, I had to look her up on IMDb as soon as the movie ended, to discover, to my delight, that I'll be seeing her again soon in Black Widow. Considering I've never seen or read this story before, I easily managed to follow what was going on with all the time jumps back and forth, and my mum was suitably impressed that I'd also managed to pick up on all the names of each of the individual girls. Speaking of that, My mum's obviously seen and read every version of Little Women, and from our discussion, this version seems to hit all the main story points of the original. The only change that she highlighted was that usually Jo gets married to Frederick at the end, but when I explained the way it was depicted here, that they're together at the end but not necessarily married, but changes the ending of the book for the publisher, as apparently happened to the actual author in real life, then my mum didn't have an issue with it as a long-term fan of the material. So my rating for Little Women is 7 out of 10 stars. Thanks for watching today's video in the 2020 Academy Award Best Picture series. A little under a week to go till the winner's announced. Check out one of the other videos in my series on my channel and subscribe while you're there so you don't miss any new videos. Have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.